Hi, and welcome to Watch It Played. My name is Rodney Smith, and in this video, we're going to learn the 1 to 5 player game Crisis, designed by Padalis Boubalis and Soteris Chatalis, and published by Ludi Creations, who helped sponsor this video. The country of Axia is on the brink of social, economic, and political collapse, but in Crisis, there is opportunity. You and a handful of plucky entrepreneurs are looking to invest in cheap companies and turn them into prosperous ventures, but you'll have to balance your needs against those of the country, because if you're not careful, your ambitions will lead to the downfall of everyone. So join me at the table and let's learn how to play. To set up, place the double-sided game board in the middle of the play area. One side is bright and the other dark, but otherwise they are the same, so just pick the one that you prefer. By the board, place the energy, food, mineral, chemical, industrial, and machine resources. To make it easier for me to organize things on the table, I'm using these containers, which are not included with the game. By the resources, also place this collection of penalty tokens, the 2 out of service tiles, and these multipliers, along with these plus 50 credit markers. These are the company cards, and you'll separate them into 3 shuffled face-down piles by level, as indicated here. Then deal 6 face up from the level 1 deck into the spaces for them in this central column. You'll also find 3 event decks, which you can distinguish by the color of their backs, along with this influence deck. Shuffle all of these into separate face-down piles. There are also a variety of tiles representing different types of employees. Any with a striped background are separated and stacked into the spaces for them here on the board. There's also a spot for 1 temporary employee tile, which looks like this. All the rest of the employee tiles you'll place and mix up into this bag, drawing 5 into their spaces at the bottom of the board. All of these employees are double-sided, but which side is face up doesn't matter. The remaining bag of employees you'll set aside for use later in the game. These are export contract tiles, which you'll sort into face-down piles based on their backs. Randomly remove 8 level 1 and 8 level 2 tiles, returning them unseen to the box. Now place 12 of the level 1 export contracts face up into the spaces for them here in the bottom right area of the board. Next, put this status marker onto space 31 of the Crisis track. Then pull out these austerity cards and find the ones with your number of players as based on the symbols found here in the bottom right-hand corner. Keep in mind these are double-sided, so check both sides to find the player count you need. In this video, we're going to set up a 2-player game, so we'll return these other ones back to the box. Now determine the difficulty level for the game you're about to play based on the symbols in the bottom right-hand corner again, either easy, medium, or hard. This represents how poorly the country of Axia is struggling, and for our first game, we'll choose easy, returning the other cards to the box. With the austerity card placed here, you'll now set a status tile onto round 1 and check this goal value, which is where you will put this status tile over the same number on this victory point grid. Each person now picks a player color and collects the following matching components: a warehouse card, 5 managers, and a loan, turn order, money, and victory point token. Beside the board, each player must set aside one of their managers to be obtained later, and they'll also stack their victory point tokens on the 15 space of the victory point track. The starting player is now chosen randomly, and their turn order token is put into the first space of this turn order track, with the rest of the players in clockwise order putting their tokens in the next available spaces. The starting player now puts their money token onto the 22 credit space of this money track, and then each other player in clockwise order starts with 2 more credits than the player before them. So player 2 would get 24, a third player would get 26, and so on. Each credit on this track represents $1 million in Axia's currency. And that's the setup. In Crisis, players will often be working together to try to ensure that the economy of the country around them doesn't collapse, or they could all lose. So sometimes you will have to collaborate with the other players. However, only the player with the most victory points has a chance of winning, as we'll see. Crisis is played over 7 possible rounds, and each is broken into 5 phases, starting with the event phase. Here, you'll check the financial status of Axia, which is the position of this marker on the Crisis track. It will either be in the green, which is best, or in the yellow or red zone, which is the worst. And based on the current color, you'll draw the top card of the corresponding event deck, placing it face up over here. Then you'll read it aloud and resolve its effect, which may take place instantly or be an ongoing effect for the rest of the round. Next, it's time for the players to pay interest on their loans. And at the beginning of the game, you won't have loans yet, but as time goes on, you may have your loan marker somewhere on this track. If so, you'll now pay the number of credits shown beside it. You lose or gain credits by moving your marker here on this track, and if you would ever have 0 credits remaining when you would need to pay a loan, you must take one of these -1 victory point tokens for each credit you couldn't pay. If you ever collect several of these, you can flip one of them over to the -3 side in order to return 2 of the tokens back to the supply for the other players. Now we move to the planning phase, where players in the turn order shown here will each put one of their managers onto an available action space, which look like this. After everyone has done this, you'll repeat that step, putting a second manager onto the board, and so on, until everyone has placed all of their managers. The board is divided into locations, each with their own numbers, going in order from top to bottom across 3 separate columns. These 2 locations with the larger platforms can hold any number of managers, but all of the small ones can hold at most 1 manager each. This area is a bit different because each player can only have 1 manager here, and pieces placed must be put into the spots from left to right, so as they are added, it would go like this. Once all managers have been assigned, you'll move to the operations phase, where you resolve each location that has at least 1 manager token, starting with the lowest numbered spot and then continuing in order through all of the rest. Now, following these locations in order matters because resources and credits that you earn from one spot can then be used at a later location. As each area resolves, you'll return the manager there to its owner. The only exception is this production area. You never put managers here, but it will always resolve. And with that understood, let's go through each location and see how they work. This area is known as Shady Business, and for each manager that you have here, you draw one of these influence cards into your hand. Now, if the influence deck is ever empty at this time, just reshuffle any discarded cards into a new draw pile. You can always look at the cards you've drawn, but keep them a secret from the other players. These will have instructions telling you when they can be played, and if you choose to use one, it is discarded and its effect here resolves. At most, though, you can play a single influence card per round, and these will always be beneficial to you in some way or make things harder on your opponents. This is the government subsidy location. A yellow circle is the symbol for credits, so this provides 4 to each manager here. If during the game you ever gain enough credits to have more than 50, just take one of these tokens and move your marker back down to 1 and keep moving up the track as necessary. You can also flip this token over if you ever get more than 100 credits. This is the leadership location. It moves your turn order token to the front of the turn track, leaving the rest of the players in the same relative order. A diamond is the symbol for victory points, so this also gets you 1 victory point. And you can even go here if you're already the first player, and you'll still get the victory point. These are recorded on the track here by moving your victory point marker up or down as necessary. This area is called Initiative, and it moves you into the second position on the turn order track, leaving the other players in the same relative order. You then get to take one of these influence cards. As with leadership, you can go here if you're already in the second position, or even if you were in the first position, in which case, it drops you back. If you place the manager onto this loan space, you now get 10 credits, but you'll lose a victory point for increasing Axia's trade burdens. If this is your first loan, place your loan marker into this first space. And then each time you take a loan after this on a future turn, you'll move your marker up again. But you can never have more than 4 loans at a single time. Remember, during the second phase, if you do have loans, you must pay this value in interest. But at any point, even just before paying interest, any player can pay back a loan, spending 10 credits for each one they wish to pay off, and then moving their marker down once for each payment. You can even pay off several loans at one time. Next, we come to the domestic industry location. A player who put their manager here must now buy any one resource. The cost to buy resources is shown here on what is known as the price table, and this lists all the different items that you can buy with their costs on the left. In other words, to buy food, it costs 4 credits and 2 victory points. When going to this domestic industry space, since you're supporting the local economy, this symbol means you do not pay the victory point portion of the cost. So food will only cost me the 4 credits. Also remember, at most you can only buy one of a single resource. That said, if you go here and cannot or choose not to buy anything, then you instead take a -1 penalty token, which will count against your final score at the end of the game. Resources you purchase must be stored in your warehouse, and as you can see, there's a limit to how many of each can be stored at a time based on these values. If you would ever gain more than what you're allowed, the extras must be returned to the supply. I should also point out that resources in the game are not limited. If one ever runs out, players should use these multiplier tokens to return some back to the supply. For example, if I had 4 minerals, I could place one here, and this would count as 3 of them, allowing me to return 2 of them back to the supply for the other players. This is the temp employee location, and a manager going here will take this token, which they'll keep until the end of the round. We'll see how this is used a little bit later, but any employees you hire are placed in front of you on the table. Going here means that you must hire one foreign employee from any of these stacks, paying the cost shown here based on the health of the economy. If the marker is in the green area, then it costs 5 credits to hire one, but if it's in the red, it only costs 1. We'll learn later how these are used and why you might want one type of employee over another. But brown are workers, green are farmers, blue are engineers, and gold are bankers. And you can also identify these by the symbols found in their bottom right-hand corners. Each worker also has a level, which is found in the top right-hand corner, but all foreign employees are level 1. So when you pick a type you want, just draw the top one from its stack. If you place a manager here, but then cannot or choose not to hire a foreign employee, you must take one of these -1 victory point tokens. This is the employees area representing the workforce in Axia that's looking for jobs, and they have varying levels of skill and may even have more than one skill. When taking your manager from this location, you collect the employee token in the spot above it. And unlike hiring foreign employees, there is no additional cost. You can even have managers in more than one space at this location, allowing you to collect more than one employee at this time. The next location is actually this entire column, and these represent the various companies that players might have chosen to acquire this round by placing their manager on the companies they wish to purchase. They will now pay the credits showing here and immediately gain the indicated victory points. You also collect the company cards you bought, placing it in front of you where it will be used later. If you placed more than one of your managers in this column, you'll be buying more than one company. But if you cannot or choose not to buy a company you placed a manager on, then you must take penalty tiles equal to the victory point value showing on it. You'll also notice that some companies have 1 or 2 manager silhouette icons printed on them. And as soon as you've purchased companies with a total of at least 3 of these symbols, you immediately collect the additional manager in your color that was set aside here during the setup, and which you'll then be able to use in all future rounds. Now we come to the top of the third column called Imports, where you'll be able to purchase resources from other countries. And there are 8 different action spaces here. And for each manager assigned to one, that player takes it back and pays the indicated number of victory points and credits to collect those resources. All of these spaces show the 1 to 2 symbol, meaning a player can buy 1 or 2 of the items shown, paying this amount for each. So if I wanted 2 minerals, it would cost me a total of 4 victory points and 8 credits. I would then collect those resources from the supply and put them into my warehouse. There are also 2 spaces here known as baskets, and a manager here can only buy 1 instance of its basket. But as you can see, they provide several resources at once. In this case, 2 energy and 2 chemicals, which would cost me 6 victory points and 13 credits. For each manager that you have on a space here where you are unable or unwilling to pay the associated costs, you must take penalty tiles equal to the value of the victory point cost of buying one instance of that type. So if I had placed a manager here but then chose not to buy any food, I would have to take 2 of these -1 penalty tiles. Whereas if I had gone here and then chose not to pay the costs, I would have to take a total of -6 in these penalty tiles. This location is the energy exchange, where each space with a manager lets that player spend credits or return resources from their warehouse to gain energy tokens, as many times as the value showing in its space. Once again, a player going here who does not or cannot make the exchange must instead take one of these -1 penalty tokens. Next is the production location, and managers are never assigned here. Instead, this area always resolves for all players. Here, you'll decide which companies you want to activate with which of your employees. And you never have to activate every company or use each employee, but for all the companies you wish to activate, you'll follow these steps. First, check what is known as the necessary employee slot on the left side of your company card. Most will only have 1, but later companies may show 2. In each slot, you must assign employees that match the type here. It doesn't matter if they are regular, foreign, or the temporary employee, so long as the type matches. This is considered wild, and it can be placed in any type of employee space. Some employees have 2 types of symbols, and if so, place them with the side showing the necessary one right side up. Employees can always be freely rearranged. You might have had an employee working at a different company last round, but can freely assign it to a new one this time. The important thing is that each employee can only work in 1 slot per round. All employees have a skill value here, but this is ignored when filling in these spaces. Only their type symbol in the bottom right-hand corner matters. Next, to activate a company, you need to pay any resources that might be showing here by taking them from your warehouse and putting them on the card. With these 2 steps complete, the company is ready to produce, but you can now assign bonus employees to a company to gain even more benefits, and this is represented by the slots showing at the bottom. Again, you'll need to match the correct type of employee to each slot, but now their skill level will be taken into account, as we'll see. After assigning as many employees to your companies as you'd like to or can, you now produce with them one at a time in the order of your choosing, which will provide you with whatever is showing in this area. In other words, as long as we've assigned at least the necessary workers here, then this farm will produce 2 food, which you would then add to your warehouse. However, if I also had a bonus employee here, then it will now produce this additional amount of food for me for a total of 4. And if I had this employee here, it would add 1 more for a total of 5. The skill levels of the employees you add to the bonus spaces add to the final output of what's produced at that company. But remember, the skill level of an employee here does not change the output at all. So really, it would be better for me to put this employee into the necessary employee slot and this one into the bonus area, because then I would be producing 1 more food for a total of 6 from just this one company. Some companies have a multiplier like this one. With no bonus employees here, this company would produce 3 victory points and a total of 2 times 2 credits, or 4 credits. However, if I had bonus employees in these spaces, I would first add their total skill value to the multiplier. So 2 plus 2 plus 1. So that means I would get a total of 5 times 2 credits, or 10 credits. The victory points here, which don't have a multiplier, would work as normal. So I would also gain 3 plus 2 plus 1, or 6 victory points total. In this way, you can see you'll want to efficiently assign workers to your companies, but it's also not unusual to activate one company during a round and then leave it empty in another round so you can assign your workers elsewhere. Just remember, again, each worker can only be assigned to one task per round. One thing I should point out is that the resources you use to activate companies must be ones that you had at the beginning of that phase. You cannot use resources you just produced from one company to pay the costs of another company during the same round. Now, when learning, It's recommended that players perform their company productions in turn order so everyone can ensure they see how it works. But once everyone is familiar with the process, this step can be done simultaneously if you'd like. Now we come to the final location, exports. This action is taken by players in the order that their managers were placed here, going from left to right. So in this case, blue first, and then white. On your turn, you then pick one of three possible actions: export resources, sell to the black market, or pass. To export resources, you look at the 8 tiles in this area. These are the resources currently in demand by the market. Well, these are the goods the market will be interested in the next round. You then pick one of these 8 tiles to fulfill by selling up to the number of shown resources from your warehouse, returning them to the supply. You don't have to sell as many as are shown here. This is just the maximum amount that you can sell at this time. However, if you export resources, you must always sell at least one. Each resource sold this way gives you the amount of victory points and credits as shown in this column of the price chart. So selling 2 food would give me a total of 2 victory points and 4 credits. After collecting what you are owed, you then remove the chosen token from the game, returning the resources you sold to the supply. Instead of exporting resources, you may choose to sell to the black market. And you don't need to pick a tile in this case. Instead, you can sell up to 4 of any one resource and then gain the value in credits shown here by the related product. As you're selling on the black market, you're avoiding government taxes and gain double the normal amount of credits. However, you're hurting the local economy and won't gain any victory points. So in this case, if I decide to sell 3 minerals to the black market, then I would gain 12 credits. Instead of selling goods, you can pass when it comes to your turn, collecting your manager from its space. And once all of the players have taken one action here, you go back to the start of the line, and players who didn't pass can again choose one of the export actions, and you'll repeat this as many times as necessary until all of the players have passed. The only restriction is that if you perform the black market action on more than one of your turns, you cannot sell a resource you already sold to the black market that round. So if I'd already sold minerals to the black market, I'd have to sell something else. And those are all of the locations and how they work. And after resolving any that had managers on them, you now move to the evaluation phase of the round, where each player compares their current victory points to the victory point goal of the round. In this case, the goal is to have at least 20. If you have exactly this amount, then nothing changes. But if you have more than is required, then you have helped the economy, and the status of Axia will improve by this difference. If a player has less victory points than the goal, the difference will be subtracted from Axia's financial status. You will check these differences for each player and then add them all together, and the position of the marker here will be adjusted to the final positive or negative amount. So in this case, we have a +1 and a -3 for a final adjustment of -2. In rounds 2, 4, and 6, any player who meets or exceeds the goal of the round gets to draw in turn order an influence card from the deck, which you're reminded of by these symbols. I should also point out that Axia's health can never go above 45, but if it ever drops below 0, the game ends early, which we'll discuss in a moment. But for now, we've covered the phases of a round, and before beginning the next round, you'll follow a few steps. First, if the temporary employee token was taken, it is returned to its space. Any employee tiles or company cards remaining here are removed from the game, and 5 new employees will be drawn into these spaces. If there are any export tiles in the leftmost column of this area, they are removed from the game, and the remaining tiles are all moved one space over to the left. You do not slide them all the way over to fill in any empty spaces. You then draw the next 4 available export tiles and place them face up into the 4 future export spaces. Keeping in mind, you will take from these columns in order, only drawing from the second pile once the first one is empty, and so on. Now move the round marker to the next row and check the new goal, setting the austerity plan marker to that value. Lastly, draw 6 new companies from the deck matching the current level as shown here, and place them face up into the spaces for them in this center column. And that will complete the round. The game will continue like this until one of two possible outcomes occur. If by the end of the 7th round, Axia's financial status is 0 or higher, the country has survived the crisis, even if just barely, and then players will proceed to the final scoring. Here, all players get one last chance to pay off any loans, and then you trade in all remaining credits, with every 5 giving you 1 victory point. Any unpaid loans you now have are worth -2 victory points each, and every penalty token subtracts from your final score. The player with the highest final value is the winner. In the case of a tie, the tied player with the most remaining credits is the winner. If there's still a tie, then the tied player with the fewest penalty tokens is the winner. If there's still a tie, the tied player with the highest combined victory points showing on all of their companies is the winner. And if there's still a tie, the tied players share the victory. Now, instead of Axia surviving the crisis, it might fail. During any round, if the marker here drops below 0, the game immediately ends. Any players who have not reached the current round's financial goal immediately lose, meaning that all players might lose. For this reason, players may need to work together sometimes to collectively improve the economy at the cost of personal gains to ensure Axia doesn't collapse. You can't be the best entrepreneur of Axia if there's no Axia left. That said, if the economy crashes but some players have met the goals of that round, they now calculate a final score. Because the country went bankrupt, you will not lose victory points for unpaid loans, as there's no one left to collect them. But this also means all of your remaining credits are worthless. You won't score any points for them. Instead, you'll subtract any amount showing on your penalty tokens from your current victory points, and the player with the most points wins. In the case of a tie, use the same tiebreakers that were already explained. And that's everything you need to know to play Crisis. You can also play this game solo. You won't have an opponent, you'll simply be trying to get your very best score. If you have any questions about anything that you saw here, feel free to put them in the comments below and I'll gladly answer them as soon as I get a chance. You'll also find forums for discussion, pictures, videos, and lots more over on its page at Board Game Geek, which I'll put a link to in the description of this video. But until next time, thanks for watching.